Just ahead on American Black Journal, I've got a great roundtable here to share their thoughts on the impact of coronavirus and the outbreak. We'll talk about how the global pandemic is being handled and how we come out of this together. Plus, we'll debate how the November presidential election is shaping up. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson, and I hope you are all doing well during this pandemic that we are all still trying to get used to. Most of us have never experienced anything like the coronavirus pandemic that has upended life around the globe. Our roundtable panel is here to weigh in on the significant impact of this new disease, officially known as COVID-19. We're going to talk about the at-risk population, including the poor, the homeless, and the elderly, and we'll look at the response to the outbreak and the effect on the economy. Plus, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, we still have to get ready for a major election in November. We'll talk about how the presidential race is still shaping up. But let's start with the coronavirus. The rapidly spreading disease has changed how we live our daily lives. Millions of Americans are effectively on lockdown. Major sporting events and concerts have been canceled or rescheduled. Schools, hotels, restaurants, casinos, stores, and many other businesses have closed, at least temporarily, in an effort to slow the spread. One Detroit's Bill Kubota reports on how one school district is helping students during the crisis.
River Rouge, classrooms are empty, but like a lot of school districts, they're still feeding the children.
Where's your mom?
The breakfast and lunch pickup started Tuesday.
Yesterday, we provided 900 meals. And so that is probably 45% of our population in day one. We believe that that number is going to be greater today. And as word of mouth gets out and people understand that this is in fact an option, we believe that that number is going to become even greater.
Superintendent Derek Coleman says for many families, these are the only meals they'll get. The district serves 2,400 students, a community with a high level of poverty.
Yeah, oh no, it's great.
9 out of 10 students receive free or reduced cost lunches. Educational packets are also going out with the meals so students can continue their studies at home. Nicole German is principal of the Ann Visger K-5 Preparatory Academy.
They can contact their teachers through emails, class dojos, as well as virtual learning. They're still learning at home with the presence of a teacher and the interactions with the teachers.
Shantae Moran teaches the 4th and 5th grade.
I'm actually sending out a dojo to all my parents to ask them if they have internet access, to have them go on learningfarm.com and complete all reading and writing assignments. I'm hoping that they'll get online, work online, and complete those packets so we can still stay abreast of everything.
If you look at traditional K-12 education or even collegiate, many districts and universities have moved to an online platform. And so I believe that the coronavirus is going to become the perfect storm that's going to force school districts to think even deeper about how do you provide those options to families where they may or may not want to come into the traditional setting for a variety of reasons.
So here we have
For districts like River Rouge, a challenge. There's less internet connectivity and more who can't afford computers.
The haves and the have-nots, so to speak, that divide could become even greater, which for us, that's why we're also focusing on having the hard packets as we work with families to get them more connected technologically.
Quiet, empty halls mid-morning, and a strange feeling for Principal German. But there's work going on. Cleaning crews are on site.
You know, doing a deep cleaning in regards to the building, making sure that everything is sanitized properly for our students.
But when will they be back? Maybe April. Could it be even later?
Schools have never been stopped, for something such as this in my lifetime. I'm not confident we'll even be back this year, if I can speak candidly.
So COVID-19 has created a new reality that includes what we're calling social distancing. So we're allowing for some distance between me and my guests as well. We are respecting the protocols. Communication specialist Karen Dumas is off to my left. PR and political strategist Greg Bowens is 6 feet away from her. Brandon Bryce, who's host of Straight Talk on 910 AM Superstation, is across from them. And Carrie Leon Jackson, also known as the Urban Conservative, is here as well. Thank you to all of you for being here. And I hope that you all are taking care of yourselves and your families. This is a really scary time. I mean, every day I wake up and wonder what will happen today that I never anticipated would ever happen in my life. Karen, I'm going to start with you. You had some thoughts before the show about what we're learning about ourselves because of this pandemic.
Yeah, I think that we are seeing a lot of the voids that exist structurally, socially, economically, educationally, that should have already been on the radar of those who are responsible for those areas. We were talking about kids having to go to school to be fed. I mean, that's an issue. The issue with the water here in the city of Detroit, I mean, now all of a sudden it's shutting people off, but we can turn it now on for temporarily for $25. People that are working that don't have adequate coverage, if in fact they're sick, paid time off, child care, all of these issues, it shows that we have been out of sync for so long. So I'm hoping this will be the opportunity for us to come back and do things differently and in a better way.
Yeah, I mean, I hear people say, Greg, the government is about to come up with $3.5 trillion to deal with this epidemic in either medical or social or economic ways. Where was that money just a few months ago when, things didn't look that great for a lot of people in this country? I mean, this idea that we can mobilize so quickly and effectively, I think is a little grating on people who have been left out and are waiting for opportunity to show up in their lives anyway.
I believe that's a really good observation, Steve. In a pandemic, everybody becomes a socialist.
right?
We start pooling all of our resources together in order to help everybody, not just the most vulnerable among us, but each other. And that, I think that's what we're sort of seeing now. This particular situation, as Karen was pointing out, shows the vulnerabilities, but it also strikes at the very heart of what we had started to become, which is a very narcissistic sort of country. Me first over everybody else. And I think that, what we are having to face together is this idea that even though I'm healthy and I feel okay, it's still my responsibility to not give a party at the crib and have a bunch of people come over and where they can go back out and potentially, make other people sick, whether that's grandma or whether that's, a niece or a nephew or a stranger who happens to have, a heart condition or is recovering from kidney transplant or whatever it might be that's infecting their immune system or impacting their immune system. And so asking people to be less self-centered is, I think a unique challenge for us as a country that maybe they don't have in other places because they're used to sharing in different kinds of ways. And so that's why it was so disappointing to see this week, Stephen, the state Senate, holding their regular session and all these old white 60-year-old dudes up there congregating and hanging out with each other. And we're looking at TV like, hey, man, I'm at home trying to make sure you don't get sick and die.
Right.
And you
Why
up
are
there
you doing that?
hanging out like it's a party.
Yeah. Brandon?
I think it's interesting. The last time America experienced something like this was maybe the Great Depression. I mean, I don't think the country has realized the state of where we are, which is why you still see people in South Beach and still see people traveling. The challenge, I want to go back to Karen, is that I think, one, I don't think it's really resonated what's happening right now. People look at the common flu and they say, okay, it'll be over in a couple of weeks. When we look at other nations, Newt Gingrich, who's in Italy now, just came out with a statement to say, this has to be taken seriously by the American people. And he's there where I think there's 7,000 now. Yeah. And so now the challenge is, one, how do we get people to understand that the social distancing should be mandated? It should not be something that they should take lightly. But also I want to go back into it. This situation is proving that there are some very serious systematic ills where we're talking about, obviously, the haves and the have-nots. We're talking about poverty. We're talking about the fact that seniors are now in a very vulnerable position. And so now I think at the end of this, if we can get through this in 3 weeks, as the Surgeon General says, we might get through it, maybe not. Yeah. I think America has to really look at how do we move forward and what are the ways we can patch up some of our social ills.
Yeah. Carrie?
I don't know about becoming a socialist. I think actually it's more of we should have had better conservative leadership at the beginning of January and at least in the third week of January. There's absolutely no reason. We had a natural barrier where the disease was not in our country from shore to shore. There was no reason that the first thing that should have occurred is the president not just should have told one boat, I don't want those people coming on shore because they're going to infect everybody else. You should have told all of those folks that, I know they're Americans, but you should have said, we're going to send you somewhere else and treat you somewhere else because you're not about to bring that on our shore. You should have told all of those Americans that were overseas who all rushed back home to bring back their infected selves and infect the rest of us, me, grandparents, and everyone else. Should have told all of them, we're going to wind up, even though we're going to have to pay to put you up somewhere else, we'll put you up somewhere else, but you're not about to bring that disease here.
So you think we could have controlled? You think we could have isolated from it? I don't know. I don't know if I think that it works quite that way.
The president.
Pandemics, diseases work that way. If in fact if you're clean from shore to shore.
Has there ever been? I mean, an opportunity to make sure something doesn't, something like this doesn't come to a certain part of the world.
You might not have 100% eliminated the folks that were here. But what you would have done, the entire purpose of shutting things down now is to flatten the curve. Yeah. Because I don't know if Americans know this or not, but hospitals are not allowed to add more beds without getting state approval.
Right. Although they're waiving a lot of that right now.
Right. So the problem is that if everybody gets sick at one time, the system's going to be overloaded. We don't have.
But we also don't have the testing capabilities. Now, China was able to contain it because they tested everybody and they quarantined those who had it until they were well, and everything is fine. We don't have those systems
in a socialist
in place
country.
To do that.
We should have contained it before. But since we haven't,
Stephen, let's also look at. China. We're talking about a totalitarian state. When the state tells you stay in your homes, people stay in their homes. Yeah. Here, the governor has said many times, isolate yourselves, stay local. We got folks still hanging out. Yeah. And if the malls were open, people would still be at the shopping mall.
There's no way in a free society. Everyone's looking at Karen and when they mention the mall. She wouldn't be in the mall now. No, I'm giving her credit. But in a free society, this idea of keeping people out of the country, I think, is antithetical to who we think we are, and of telling people what they can or can't do, it, again, bumps up against what we think America
free society,
is.
Your right to travel to any place it does not interfere with my right to not get infected.
I agree with you, but I think that most people don't feel that way.
Gulags in a second here. But not only did the Chinese say, everybody's got to stay home, but they gave everybody a mask and said everybody wear a mask. So that if you're coughing, you ain't coughing on me, and if I'm coughing, I'm not coughing on you. But this is American Black Journal, and so I think it's really important for us at least to talk about how this can how does impact the Black community, because we can be the most vulnerable when it comes to these kind of outbreaks because we don't have access to health care, and those kinds of things.
First people laid off.
Yeah. Right. First people laid off.
And in fact, I want to get into that in the next segment because I think there's no question that this will look different for us than it does for everybody else, just like everything else does. So let's go ahead and talk a little more about how this looks to African Americans. I wanted to talk in the second section a little about the election, and we'll get to that too. But I want to talk about African Americans. As you say, the extent to which people will be sick is going to be greater for African Americans, and the economic consequences are going to be higher. Let's start with you, Carrie.
The one thing that needs to be said is that right now we're dealing with a state of panic. The other night, the president attempted to. The purpose of a presidential address is you're supposed to go on and calm a worried
Reassure
nation.
people, right.
He went on and he scared all of America, black and white America. And you can tell that if you watch the stock tickers every day when he's speaking, you see the numbers drop the very second that he starts to speak. And we've learned that the only person in the federal government that anybody trusts at this point is Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Right.
Our community has to stop listening so much to internet rumors and flat out lies about what can and can't occur. But as Karen started saying earlier, it's the one good thing that's coming out of this is we're all going to have to learn to live a little bit more responsibly, and not, because the truth is, in our community, we regularly interact with people who have active infectious tuberculosis and also all of the hepatitis and everything, and nobody protects us from that stuff.
Yeah.
We
Go ahead,
don't
Karen.
know who we interact with, but this is to me an opportunity for people to recognize what they don't have and what they need. A lot of us want and think we need more than we do. I mean, this is an opportunity for us to be resourceful. You know, I said the other day, we need to not waste what we might not be able to replace or readily replace, but also the value of having good credit, having cash on hand, protecting those things. But you say don't listen to internet rumors. Who can the African American community go to and listen to for resourceful, accurate, up-to-date information? I mean, you have a quote-unquote president, and I say use that term loosely, who was on the air that said, you know, there are people out here that are dying that have never died before. My God, how would that not scare you?
Ridiculous thing.
Exactly, but economically, African Americans, not everybody, and I don't need to make that a blanket statement, but we do need to recognize, you know, cash, credit, collateral. You have to be prepared.
They matter more in an emergency.
They matter more, but this should show you that they do. And while we do need to help each other, you know, we all need to be in the position to help someone less fortunate.
Go ahead,
you know,
Brandon.
Steve, I think this is an interesting time because how it relates to African Americans. I mean, outside of Detroit, when you're looking at cities like Highland Park, Inkster, River Rouge, these communities have been ravished long before coronavirus. And so I think, you know, what we're doing is it's highlighting the fact that, you know, even in times of need, I'm not sure outside of just the public health side, African Americans are really going to be affected economically because we've been affected for the last 20 or 30 years.
But maybe it gets worse, is I think the fear, Greg, is that this enhances those problems, and there isn't a ready set of solutions that people are willing to.
It might get worse, but at least we're going to start to address the fact that the majority of kids in the community only get meals at
Don't
school.
eat.
We need to address that.
That ain't new. That ain't no new.
It needs to be
that ain't
fixed.
no new
That's
thing.
been going on.
We've got to
It
solve
should not be that way. It should also not be where people have to go to work sick, mask their symptoms because they won't be paid.
'Cause they're not worried
People
that-
should be
it is.
conscious
That's
of the
right.
fact that even if you get a carry out, you need to tip. These are people that are working. I mean, these are things that are coming to light. If corporations could be flexible in doing certain things now, they should exercise that flexibility earlier.
Right.
I go back to the water with the city of Detroit. I go back to the buses. I mean, we've seen all these compromises, and I know it's not a sustainable model, but exercise that flexibility to give people the opportunity to leverage their
But
economic
how can
situation.
we maybe incorporate some of those things more into normal functioning?
Exactly.
Well, you know,
I don't want to run out of time
Yeah.
before we talk about the impact of this on the presidential election. I think it's going to have a tremendous impact. It's already preventing some people from being able to vote in primaries, although it does seem like the Democratic primary may be wrapping up with Biden really pulling away. But does this make it impossible for Donald Trump to get reelected? I mean, it seems to me that his performance during this has been so bad that maybe it does. But I guess you never know. I mean, I didn't think he'd get elected in the first place. So
Yeah, right. Let's not speak in absolutes here, right? I mean, I thought that Republicans were going to lose their mind as we got closer to November with our, relaxed sort of voting rules we have here. No reason absentee ballot voting, same-day registration, and things of that nature. And that may in fact still happen. We don't want to give people another reason not to vote.
Right.
And saying that I might get sick if I'm waiting in a long line is a reason not to do it, unfortunately, Right. And I think
so
that
it's early enough now for us to address and still make sure that we can turn out a large number of folks who actually
Figure out.
Well, it's gonna. We all work in politics, and so it's really going to have to change the strategy that we use to get out the vote. Which is basically going to be to get the votes in, right?
Well,
because
I think the running partner, the vice president selection for Biden is going to make a huge difference.
Oh, for sure.
Because if he picks the wrong person, then you're going to have the Hillary effect. Somebody that doesn't resonate with the voters enough to keep them at home, and they can use whatever as an excuse that they want to. And so while Donald Trump has done such a terrible job that it forced Kerry to leave the Republican Party, there are still a lot of people.
Still a lot of people going to vote for him.
There are still a lot of people that are staunch Trump supporters, and so we shouldn't take that lightly.
And so your job then is to get enough other people, not just do what happened in 2018, but you still got to go out of the way. We still had an increased voter turnout for the primaries, but it's still not where it should be.
Well,
so we've still got to push and get enough people to actually vote.
But what do you do
and the
now
thing about
that
it
hasn't been done
that you'll have black folks who will get complacent. We survived slavery, we survived Jim Crow, we survived Ronald Reagan and both Bushes. We can survive this guy. And if we're not mad enough to show up,
or focused enough on what's
or even
actually
hopeful
happening.
enough that
right.
things will change, to show up, I think that's an issue that we as a Democratic Party are really going to start to
Stephen, I
address.
think there's a couple things here. One, Trump's base, regardless how crazy times are, they're going to stick
They'll
with
vote
this guy.
for him anyway.
And so I think that's one thing. But the other thing is, I want to go back to something Karen said. The vice president, we always say, well, the vice president will decide this. In this case, because you're dealing with a guy who is clearly showing some people say some signs of dementia, this vice president is literally got to be somebody who has national appeal and is ready to take over day one if something happens to Joe Biden. Yeah. And so I think the challenge with our voters is, and with Biden is, he's got to make a decision because he's going to win most likely the nomination. He's got to make a decision. Do I pick the candidate who can win national polls, or do I pick the candidate who resonates with African-American voters who are the reason that I'm back in the game?
He's got to pick the candidate that's going to bring the Bernie
That's going to bring the Bernie supporters.
He's got to solidify the party. He's got to make sure that you turn out the people who are already registered Democrats.
We're running out of time, but I want to make sure I note that you said dementia, I said age. When you described Joe Biden, I did not say that. You did.
Joe like that.
And turn the conversation up for midterm elections. That's something else that we overlook that has a drastic impact on the president's success or failure.
It does.
Oh,
all right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Thanks for being here. That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information on our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.